Welcome to the WDW News Today podcast. This is episode number 51. I'm Tom Corliss. I'm here with my co-host this week, Santa Gertie. Thanks for being here, Gertie. That's great. Santa Gertie, watch me slowly slip into delusion, or listen to me slip into delusion, those of you that do the audio show. I want to apologize, those of you who listen to the audio version of the podcast. Last week's show might have been weird because Eric decided to show a lot of video clips. So don't worry, this week I will bore you with my solo voice, which is something I promised I wouldn't do with podcasts back in 2007. And yet here we are. But nonetheless, I will be interacting with our WIGS members who are watching us record this live on Monday night. They get early access to the show at patreon.com/WDWNT. We thank them for their support. The other thing they get is a discount on Santa Gertie. We've sold over 750 of them, so there are really, when we deduct the ones that we hold aside in case anything goes wrong in shipping, and also those that are for us that work here, there's probably less than 200 Santa Gerties left. So get yours now at WDWNT.shop or carouselproducts.com. Pre-order now. You will have them for Christmas, we promise. And look, she has her cute little ornament. She jostles it around, and her Santa hat. And it's a nice, softer material than the last one, actually. It's different. It's a whole new manufacturer, actually. But this is the last time we're doing Gertie. Gertie's done. Don't worry, we have other stuff in the works, but this is the last Gertie. So if you ever want to own Gertie as a plush, your last chance is here. You can't see this at home, but the old prototype Gertie, the other Gertie, the original, is giving me the side eye from a table behind the camera. And is like, it's angry that a Gertie has replaced her. No, leave her there with her judgmental side eye. I don't know if you could turn that camera over there so people can see what I'm talking about. There's a pile of garbage over there. And her neck is cranked in such a way that it looks like I'm getting, when your dog is begging for food, it's like that kind of look. That's what's happening right now. Can they see it? We're working on it. It won't be funny anymore. There we go. So yeah, she's looking right at me right now with the new Gertie. This is the story of Toy Story. You replaced one toy with another. Now that Gertie's they're both gonna come to life later, and he's gonna try to get rid of Santa Gertie. And then they end up at Pizza Planet. Anyway, I digress. So our WIGS members, the other fun thing that happened was I occasionally ask the WIGS members for topics. And Grace, who I think is watching live when we're recording this, asked about backstories. I will read you exactly what she said. I have to go to the general channel of our Discord, which is part of our WIGS community. I wrote, I'm flying solo on the podcast again this week. Are there any topics you would like to hear about? Grace wrote, ride backstories or hotel backstories. Lore seems really important to you, and I'd love to hear you go over the best stories that Imagineers wrote into areas, rides, restaurants, and spaces. A story time with Tom. And so that's the theme of this week's episode, story time with Tom. Katie is already prepared. She's half asleep in the chair now. She's slumped, half asleep in the chair. This will be less exciting probably than me yelling about Universal, which is, I believe, the third most watched and listened to episode of this show ever, because it turns out people on the internet respond to that kind of thing. And then when we only talk about popcorn, about 8,000 people watch or listen. So yes, it does turn out that if you are negative on the internet, more people will watch or listen to you. Please don't take that to heart and ruin the world. Anyway. So that's the theme of the episode. Real quick, though, I do want to mention today, when this is airing, is Election Day in the United States, and I hope our American viewers and listeners have exercised their right to vote today. Walt Disney was a proud American, and I'm sure You do Walt Disney proud if you went out and voted. He was a big fan of the presidents. Of course, it was a different time. The world's a very different place now, but nonetheless, it's important that you go vote if you have the ability to do so. I went to early voting on Sunday, and I voted here in Celebration, as I am a resident of Osceola County. I went to the library here in Celebration to vote, and what I loved about it was all of the Disney clothing and ephemera that people were wearing in line to vote on Sunday night. So first of all, there was clearly a couple that came from Epcot from the races. This weekend was the Wine and Dine. Congratulations to my lovely girlfriend, Rosanna, who completed her challenge this weekend. But these people came in their race clothes, and the gentleman was in more generic race clothes, not Disney, but his significant other was wearing plush rats, a Remy and an Emile, had the shirt on, the backpack, the whole shebang. Also, someone walked up in a Dueling Dragons shirt from Horror Nights a couple years ago. That was another good one. But my personal favorite was, nothing made me prouder than I voted for the next president of the United States next to someone wearing a Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure t-shirt from Tokyo Disney Sea. So there you go. It was a good time. But yeah, go get it done. Thank you for participating in democracy. You also participated in democracy by choosing to watch me talk about Backstories for the next hour and a half. That was your free choice. No one made you, just so you know. But that is the theme of today's show. We're going to talk about attraction backstories. We'll see if I get through this. If time becomes an issue, we won't. I will be interacting with the wigs in the Discord as we go through here. I know it is 32 pages. I'll try to skip ahead. You may have heard these before if you watch WDW News Tonight, and have for several years. Several years ago, we did a March Madness tournament that was purely Disney backstories. And so these were read then, so you may know them, but I know News Tonight does not have the audience that our other programming has. So for many of you, this will all be very new. And we'll stop and talk about these as we go along. If you have any that are not mentioned that you want to talk about, be sure to bring them up in the chat, and we will do so. Those of you watching or listening to this later, be sure to drop in the comments, and maybe on next week's show we'll touch on anything we may have missed. Which camera should I look at? That camera now? I forget what someone called this when we did this single shot on the Epic Universe episode, but it was referred to as, I don't know if it was like ransom footage or it's something like that. I don't know. The ransom cam. I'm like the guy in Iron Man, what was his name? Ben Kingsley played him. Oh my goodness. He's going to be in a new Marvel show. He played a character who was playing the Mandarin, thank you, the 10 Rings, yeah. When they did those, the threat videos. Anyway, nonetheless, let's begin with our backstories. Here's a good one. The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. This one's short and sweet. The Hollywood Tower Hotel on Halloween 1939. 5 passengers stepped aboard an elevator and into the Twilight Zone, and the hotel was abandoned from that point. Of course, there's a lot more. There are intricacies to that, such as the Tip Top Club where the party was, things of that sort. But yeah, it was a hotel that was founded in 1917. There's a sign in the queue as you go by. It says founded in 1917. It was a relatively new hotel, a beacon for the show business elite. And unfortunately, just 22 years into its existence, a horrible accident pretty much ended the Hollywood Tower Hotel, although it became famous for other reasons, as that's the reason why we're visiting it in the attraction.
Yeah, Trevor Slattery.
Who's Trevor Slattery?
It's the actor name of the Mandarin. So the character.
Oh, okay.
Trevor Slattery.
I was confused. Yeah, so Trevor Slattery is going to be in that new Mr. What is it? It's Wonder Man? Wonder Man. Not to be confused with Wonder Woman, which is DC. Another streaming series, which I'm sure will be a hit.
I don't even know what you're talking
Look up Marvel Wonder Man. It's a thing. I just saw the trailer.
about. TV miniseries.
Yeah. Is it on TV or is it streaming?
Streaming service Disney Plus.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
streaming.
But Trevor Slattery,
TV miniseries.
Ben Kingsley as Trevor Slattery is in that film, in that series. Yes, for the third time. He was in Iron Man. Was that
in Shang-Chi
2 or 3?
3.
3. Iron Man 3, Shang-Chi, and now Wonder Man. Soaring Fantastic Flight. Soaring is set at the Museum of Fantastic Flight in Porto Paradiso, which is presenting a retrospective on the life of Camelia Falco, an aviation pioneer and the first female member of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers from the early 1800s that developed the Dream Flyer, a glider inspired by the flying machines imagined by Leonardo da Vinci. The spirit of Falco appears to guide guests to the Dream Flyer and takes them on an imaginative flight of fantasy all around the world, utilizing a modified version of the existing Soarin' Around the World film. Of course, she has her bird, which is Areta. I forget the name of the bird. Nana would know. I forget. It's a very Japanese name. Yeah, she has the magical bird that flies over the screen and sprinkles like pixie dust. And, so you're there in modern day. This is Soarin' in Disney Sea, the best one. You're there modern day, and the painting of the woman comes to life, and her bird, the bird spirit and her spirit guide you to the Dream Flyer, and then you fly away on a magical flight around the world. I like it. It's cool. I'm not a big Soarin' guy, but this is definitely my favorite one. Second might be, Soarin' over California is my favorite of the films, bar none. But as far as versions of Soarin', it's definitely Disney Sea, and then I would go with the weird Shanghai one. If you watch the vlog series we have here on the channel, there is that crazy pre-show where they all turn into animals. It's like an Animorphs episode. If people are old enough to remember that, are you old enough for Animorphs? You don't know what that is. Yeah, I didn't think so.
It just sounds fun.
It's the covers of the Animorphs books were peak 90s. Like digital art of a frog and like the progression from frog to man. You've probably seen them. I'm sure at some point in your life you've seen those covers.
I know those books.
You know them. I'm sure they sat in your school for decades, and unfortunately one day you pulled one off a shelf and decided, oh no, I'm going to read this.
I did not read any.
That's good. It's for the best that you did not.
I thought the covers were too weird.
They are weird. It's weird. The Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, which next month is going to celebrate its 30th anniversary. Well, would have been its 30th anniversary. If only someone was doing something for those. An alien corporation called Excess Tech visits Earth and sets up their technology in the convention center in Tomorrowland, the Tomorrowland Interplanetary Convention Center, as explained by the company's chairman, L.C. Clench. They want to show off their new advanced teleportation technology to humans. And after a flawed demonstration by the Sir robot, guests are shown to a chamber with the large teleportation tube in the center. They're seated in harnesses, and the demonstration begins with Clench and two excess scientists, Dr. Femus and Spinlock, broadcasting live from their planet. There's a lot more intricacy to this one, too. There's the whole... They layer in that it is an evil corporation that's trying to exploit Earth. And at one point, the chairman, which is played by... oh, my goodness, Jeffrey... the guy who wasn't in Beetlejuice because he did some unfortunate things. Can you look up Jeffrey whatever from Beetlejuice? I'm blanking on his name. I'm very old, so I just keep blanking on things throughout the episode.
Jones?
Jeffrey Jones, thank you. Jeffrey Jones played Elsie Clench, and I believe there's a part at which he goes, it's our duty as to make this technology available to the lesser life forms like those on Earth, and profit is just a byproduct we've learned to live with. It was going to be the evil mega corporation of the attraction was going to be more overt, but needless to say, Disney executives felt a bit seen and asked them to tone it down a bit. If you ever come to our museum, though, there is some cool art from the original intended version of Alien Encounter where it was much darker and the corporation was far more evil than they even were in that version. They're still talking about it. I had no idea who voiced Sir until recently. 2 different people voiced Sir. So there are 2 versions of Alien Encounter. The version of Alien Encounter that will turn 30 in December is version 1. Version 1 has Phil Hartman, who was a Saturday Night Live staple for many, many years, who unfortunately passed away a couple years later. Phil Hartman was Sir in the original version. Michael Eisner reportedly saw version 1 and thought it was too scary, and so they closed Alien Encounter shortly after the preview period in December of 94, and it reopened officially in June of 95 with instead Tim Curry as Sir. And I don't know if it was because they felt bad, or I believe the story is Phil Hartman wanted to be in a Disney attraction. He very much wanted to do that. And so instead, they gave him one of the roles of William and Morris in the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management pre-show, which that then opened just a couple years later. Yeah. Illuminations, Reflections of Earth. I mean, it's the story of Earth and mankind. It's the story of us, like Luminous tells us. Yeah, it's the story. It follows it from the Big Bang. That whole opening sequence was the Big Bang, and we go through to. Don't bring up Cosmic Rewind when I'm talking about Illuminations, please. We go through the Ding Dang, and we have, culture emerges, and we come together, and blah blah blah. I won't bore you because again, I'm going to refer you to another video, which is the complete uncut footage from our event. Reflections of Forever, which celebrated the final day ever of Illuminations, Reflections of Earth with those who actually made it. So rather than hear me talk about it, I invite you to go listen to the people who actually made the show talk about it. It is required viewing. Set aside several hours at some point when you have it. Make a party out of it. Pop some popcorn. Make drinks, whatever. It is, as a Disney fan, this should be required viewing. And I don't say that because there's any benefit to me. The video is demonetized because we don't have the rights to the music. So I don't make any money from you sitting and watching that for several hours. That was done purely so you can enjoy that. So please go enjoy it. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Once a working mine during America's gold rush, there was gold found deep within Big Thunder Mountain in Red Rock Canyon. Almost overnight, the town of Tumbleweed became a thriving mining town. And one Barnabas T. Bullion established the Big Thunder Mining Company to go after the gold. Barnabas was born into a powerful East Coast family, so naturally he thought it was his very right to claim the gold inside the mountain. Well, the mountain had other ideas. Big Thunder Mountain was said to be protective of its gold and would curse any who dare try to take it. While in operation, miners would hear ghostly sounds and believed supernatural powers inhabited the mine. Strange events would occur, including cave-ins and equipment failing. And one stormy night, a flash flood completely wiped out the town, destroying the mining company. Rumors have it that Professor Cumulus Isobar, a rainmaker, brought the flood to Tumbleweed. And if you look carefully, you might spot a mysterious machine with Cumulus's name on it while experiencing Big Thunder Mountain. That's going to be in the town of Tumbleweed scene. He's the man in the bathtub. Nowadays, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad travels through an empty ghost mine and rushes riders through the canyons, caverns, abandoned mine shaft, and ghost town of Tumbleweed. Barnabas, however, is still trying to dig and find gold inside the mountain, despite the warnings and curses of the mountain. The legend is the mountain and mine are both still haunted. That is a sanitized version of that backstory, because the original backstory, the spirits are of Native American origin. So the idea is that they disturbed, these Native American spirits, and that's what's drove them out of the mountain and caused the flood and the earthquake. There is a song that was played primarily at the grand opening, where the backstory says that the curse involved, if anyone said the word thunder, the mountain would shake and there'd be like an earthquake as part of the curse. I have never heard that again since. I don't know if that's really part of it, but if you ever wonder why the trains don't have conductors, supposedly it is the spirits driving the trains. That's why they're running without people in them. Now, the other part of the Native American story, which I've told before, is if you look closely, specifically at the Walt Disney World version, if you look closely at the highest peak, it is meant to be a very stereotypical caricature of a Native American with the headdress on the top. So there's a line clearly if you look at Bryce Canyon or the Grand Canyon or things of the sort, obviously you see the lines in the rock, right? The layers. There is a very distinct line at one point, and then the headdress begins, and there is obviously characters. If you've seen Peter Pan, characters of Native Americans, there was a thing with big noses, right? And so there is clearly a rock sticking out that is a very big nose. And so Disney doesn't like to mention it, obviously, because it's offensive. I don't know if maybe in this big, more than a year refurbishment, I've mentioned this enough to where maybe someone is aware of it and they'll probably go kind of remove it from the peak. But it's there. And yeah, there is a connection between the Native American spirits and Big Thunder Mountain. Yeah, Big Thunder Mountain backstory is so good it got a TV pilot. It did. It was called Tumbleweed. I would pay copious amounts of money to see that pilot. It never aired. I would love to see what that looked like. I want to know so bad. So bad. Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar. We're going to go back to sea a bit. The story of the Hangar Bar builds out Jock's character, giving him a past as a seasoned circus pilot turned adventurer. Later on in his life, he made his home at Disney Springs, falling in love with the place when he flew over Florida in search of the Fountain of Youth. He opened a bar, which is chock full of memorabilia from his past. Once the storyline was established, Imagineers were able to add authentic details to the bar, from collections of aviation parts, see the impressive ceiling fan made of vintage airplane propellers, to a diving bell families can actually dine inside, to Reggie, Jock's canvas-covered steamboat named after his pet snake. Jock is also a member of Sea. That is alluded to on the menu. Not much further implication throughout the restaurant, but it is indicated on the menu that he is indeed a Sea member. Sea is probably a whole nother thing. We'll get its own episode of the podcast at some point, or maybe even a video series here on the channel. Not sure. Now here's one of my favorites, Mickey's Toontown. I love this one. As the story goes, after Mickey Mouse became a star in 1928, he found the perfect home in a quiet residential Toon suburb away from the hustle of Hollywood. As one would expect, Mickey's friends also decided they would enjoy this secluded neighborhood and moved in as well. Because of his popularity, Mickey knew he and his friends would continue to film cartoons, so rather than commute to Hollywood, he constructed a small movie barn behind his house so he and all his friends could continue to make their cartoons without leaving their burg. It is believed that when Walt Disney was looking for the area to build his amusement enterprise in the early 1950s, Mickey Mouse suggested the fields of orange groves surrounding his neighborhood. The only request he had was that Mickey's Toontown be kept secret. They agreed, and Disneyland was opened nearby on July 17, 1955. Mickey, Minnie, and the other Disney characters could say hello to all the families visiting and then retreat back to their homes as soon as the park closed for the day. Years later, in 1990, the residents of Mickey's Toontown gathered and made a very important decision. They decided that they wanted to open the gates to their secret hideaway to non-Toon guests. Such a cute backstory. I love it. Obviously, not real. That's not how Disneyland happened. But it's such a cute backstory idea. There's a lot more to this. What's interesting is how that deviates from the Toontown of Roger Rabbit, which is, of course, the inspiration for Toontown. The theme park inspiration for the concept of Toontown is what they did at Walt Disney World. So Walt Disney World began this whole craze with Mickey's Birthday Land in 1988. It was the first new land at the Magic Kingdom, meant to be temporary, and you could go meet Mickey Mouse. It was the first time they ever built a space with a line to meet Mickey Mouse, which became a ubiquitous thing in Disney parks around the world out of necessity. Really, he was getting too swarmed in the park, and so they did Birthday Land. It was so popular they kept it after his birthday was over. It was his 60th birthday. After the birthday was over, they changed it to Mickey Starland, which you could still meet Mickey back there, but there was kind of an evolution. There was a stage show with Disney afternoon characters. It was very, very popular. The Duckburg facades, all that fun stuff. And then finally, after Toontown opened at Disneyland, they decided, hey, this is really popular. Maybe let's put a little money into Starland and make it Toontown. But I guess Walt Disney World didn't want to spend too much. And so it was, well, how could we make this Toontown but not put in the money of like the Disneyland or Tokyo Disney project? And the answer was to turn it into like a country area. So it was Mickey's Toontown Fair. The houses, because the houses were there already. So Mickey and Minnie's houses originate in Florida. The houses were there. They kept those and just expanded upon the idea by adding the Barnstormer. They reused the Cornelius Coote statue that was there previously, the big stork fellow. And he went outside of County Bounty. That became the big store. They just sort of repurposed what was there for it. But, yeah. Oddly enough, I never visited any of the Toontown, Starland, Birthday Land. I was never into characters, said YZF Donor. I was, as I was of the right age for it. Here's another fun, great one. Pleasure Island was an abandoned industrial waterfront district that was converted into a nightclub complex. The property was originally owned by one Meriwether Adam Pleasure, a seafaring adventurer who during the 19th century operated Pleasure's Canvas and Sailmaking Incorporated. His business becomes the heart of Pleasure Island, a place to which daring adventurers from all over the globe came to tell their incredible tales. But Meriwether was not a landlubber at heart, and hearing these stories made him long once again for adventure on the open seas. One day he heeded the haunting call of the bounding main and set sail from Pleasure Island. And upon learning that their father was lost at sea, Pleasure's two lazy sons abandoned the business. The once bustling waterfront district was left to decay beside a mysterious lagoon. This is not only the backstory of Pleasure Island. This is also the backstory of Typhoon Lagoon. So Meriwether Adam Pleasure gets lost in the storm. The storm is the storm that puts the Tilly, the Miss Tilly boat, on top of the rocket and creates Typhoon Lagoon. These open the same year. They open the same time. They are interconnected. So they geographically and backstory are adjacent to each other. They're nearly adjacent to each other in real life, obviously. But the once bustling waterfront district was left to decay beside a mysterious lagoon, and years later, the near ruins of Pleasure Island were rediscovered by adventurous Imagineers with their own incredible tales to tell. These Imagineers refurbished the island, turning its run-down warehouses into exciting restaurants and nightclubs that were designed to reflect the original themes of Pleasure's functional buildings. Once again, the district bustles with the activity of world travelers who come together in the spirit of fun and adventure, a tradition established here a century ago. There is so much more to that. We could spend the whole episode getting into the crazy backstories of Pleasure Island. There's a whole thing. There was the XZFR Rollerdrome, which was the short-lived roller skating rink club. That had a UFO theme, and there's a whole backstory about Meriwether Adam Pleasure believing in UFOs and like building his own spaceship and things. Jason is the keeper of that story, so another time we'll have Jason tell that. And obviously the Adventurers Club has its own lore as well. The funny thing about Pleasure Island is their direct influence actually comes from Vancouver. I'm going to try to find the name of the real place. I forget. I've been there and I can't remember the name. It's very famous. I'm sure as soon as I see it, I'm gonna. Granville Island. So Granville Island, I finally got to go. I don't know if I could find this footage for Billy or not. This might be another. We might just finally release the vlogs from the when we did the Alaska cruise last year. It cruised out of Vancouver, and so I got to go to Granville Island. And very clearly, from the moment I arrived, it was could not be more transparent that the entire idea was borrowed for Pleasure Island. So it was an abandoned industrial district that finally someone looked around and went, well, you know, what if we turned it into a shopping and dining area? And that's what happened. And so it had that same industrial theme, that repurposed industrial theme, but of course, because it was actually repurposed industrial facilities. So that was the real thing. And then Pleasure Island, the Imagineers saw that and went, oh, this would be really cool. And we could develop our own interesting little backstory here. But Granville Island, if you ever went to Pleasure Island, if you're going to be in Vancouver, I would definitely go look, because you'll recognize the shape of some buildings. The infamous Pleasure Island sign is definitely the Granville Island sign. There are a lot of similarities. And they're not happenstance. They're on purpose. But yeah, I digress. Let's move on. Expedition Everest. The adventure begins in Asia at Disney's Animal Kingdom as guests join the Expedition Everest team and embark on a trek through Anandapur. The trail leads visitors to the village of Sirkazong, which means Fortress of the Chasm. In the early years, the Royal Anandapur Tea Company shipped its tea by train from Sirkazong through the Forbidden Mountain Pass, but the railroad was closed after a series of mysterious accidents, rumored to be from the hand of the Yeti. Today, the village of Sirkazong is thriving and has moved beyond its tragic past, largely thanks to the efforts of the local entrepreneurs. In spite of the local opposition, the Himalayan Escapes Tours and Expeditions Company has partially refurbished the railway and now offers transportation for adventurers to the base camp at Mount Everest. I don't know if people know this or not, but the large peak on Expedition Everest is not Everest. Everest is what looks like a shorter peak in the back, but it's supposed to emulate it being far away. So this is the Forbidden Mountain, thus Expedition Everest, Legend of the Forbidden Mountain. You are on an expedition to the base camp at Mount Everest, but you are going through the Forbidden Mountain on this now repurposed tea train, which they should have known was not safe based on what happened to it in the past. But now, guess who you're going to run into? Good thing she's immobile. Space Mountain de la Terre à la Lune. That's from the Earth to the Moon. I'm going to save this one because I think we're going to talk about this a lot more in a couple months' time. So I'm going to leave that one out of here for now. Oh, here's Grizzly Gulch. Grizzly Gulch is the Frontierland, essentially, of Hong Kong Disneyland. It's home to Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Mine Cars, one of my favorite original attractions anywhere in the world. It's the only place you can experience it. Funny enough, we just read Everest. It's the same ride system as Everest, but way more tame. Basically a family coaster version of Expedition Everest with animatronic bears. It is magnificent. You can watch a POV of it on our channel. I love this ride. If it wasn't for Mystic Manor, this would be my favorite thing in Hong Kong. But that 1-2 punch is all the reason in the world to go see that park. Taking place in Northern California during the Gold Rush, Grizzly Gulch was founded on August 8th, 1888, believed to be the luckiest day, the luckiest month, the luckiest year. So in that culture, 8 is the lucky number. However, the early settlers of the region ran into misfortune as they soon discovered that they had built atop a geyser field. The old part of the town is now called Geyser Gulch, and eventually the town's luck began to change. Captain Phineas Cosgrove was exploring the mountainside and came across a family of 3 bears scratching themselves along the rocks. As they left, he found traces of gold and staked a claim, starting the Big Grizzly Mountain Mining Company. As the mine grew, another amazing find came when a local stray golden retriever named Lucky sniffed out and led miners to a gigantic 150-pound gold nugget, which is now on display in the town. These animals became beloved mascots of the city, and the family of bears given the names Rocky, Motherlode, and Nugget being given protection in spite of them occasionally making trouble for the mine. They make the trouble for the mine when you're on the ride. It's very charming. It feels like Mystic and Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Mine Cars both feel like they're out of the Mark Davis era of Imagineering. They feel very much like Haunted Mansion and Pirates and all the stuff of that era built in the 2010s. That's why I love them so much, because I was nearly in tears the first time I went to Hong Kong, because it just was this moment of realizing they could still do it. Like, they could still make original attractions that have all the charm and the magic and the wonder of what Mark and Claude and Raleigh and Harriet and Alice and Walt and all of those people did in the beginning. They could still do it. The creativity exists to still do it. And I hope someday again they get the chance to do so. Another personal favorite of mine, Blizzard Beach. According to Disney legend, a freak snowstorm on January 11th, 1977 in the area led to the development of Florida's first ski resort. Ski lifts were put up, toboggan runs were laid down, and an entire resort area blossomed around the mountain of snow. But naturally, because of the temperature in Florida, the snow dissipated quickly, and the snow rapidly turned to slush. This left behind a collection of waterlogged yet snowless ski jumps and chairlifts. The operators were preparing to cut their losses and walk away. However, they were interrupted by a loud yell coming from the summit of the mountain of melting snow and looked up to see a blue alligator sliding down the mountain at top speed. Ice Skater, the mascot, then landed in a pool of melted snow at the base of the mountain with a thunderous splash. The ski resort operator suddenly saw the park's potential, and the mountain of snow became Disney's Blizzard Beach, the most slushy, slippery, exhilarating water park anywhere. Slalom courses, bobsled, and toboggan runs became downhill water slides. The creek of melted snow that formed at the base of the mountain became a relaxing tube ride. The chairlift carried swimmers instead of skiers, and the ski jump became the tallest and fastest water slide in the world. I do not think, if themed entertainment continued onward for 500 more years, that anyone would ever come up with a story as ingenious as Blizzard Beach. The light bulb going off when someone looked at like a ski resort and went, a bunch of this stuff, if the snow melted, could be like water park. Like, I don't even know how they arrived at that thought, but it's so ingenious. And then on top of that, to be like, well, it's ski resort turned water park in Florida. Well, what does Florida have? We have gators. And they're like, what if we had a snowy gator? And they're like, Ice Gator. I love that. I know people like Laguna Gator. Laguna Gator was created to be the mascot of Typhoon Lagoon after Ice Gator existed. I like Laguna Gator, but at the same time, like, it's just not, like, it's just an alligator, right? Like Ice Gator, it's such an ingenious story. He's so fun, this alligator mascot wearing skis, and he has a scarf and the little beanie on. It's just, I love him. I love him so much. It's the best. That's my favorite backstory of all time, bar none. I don't think it will ever be topped. At least not for me. Laugh Floor, you guys know Laugh Floor. Mystic Manor is a good one. Mystic Manor is the mansion that Henry Mystic built on an uncharted tropical wilderness in New Guinea, plagued with supernatural events. The mansion was built out of Henry's love for the unusual happenings and officially dubbed the area Mystic Point. Mystic Manor is where many of his findings, as well as some of other members of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers have found, are displayed. As of recent events, Henry has brought in a new exhibit, a mysterious Balinese music box that has been rumored that music brings inanimate objects to life. Guests are invited to tour Mystic Manor on vehicles of Henry's own invention, the Mystic Magneto vehicles, and that's how you get into that story. But yes, it's a remote outpost in New Guinea where he's decided to set up a residence, but it's also a meeting space. So next door, you have is it Explorers Club? Is that the restaurant name? I think so. You have the Explorers Club. I don't know why they didn't just go for Adventurers Club, but the restaurant is the Explorers Club. It's supposedly where they meet. Again, the sea members, the infamous portrait of the sea members originates from this project in the queue. That's where it came from. You'll find Harrison Hightower from the Tower of Terror and a number of other characters who have appeared in other attractions and haven't, including Captain Mary Oceaneer, who's appeared on both the cruise line and at Typhoon Lagoon at this point. What's funny about it not being the Adventurers Club at Mystic Point is a lot of the propping is from the Adventurers Club. Adventurers Club closed in 2008 at Walt Disney World, and at WDI held on to a lot of props, and Mystic Manor ended up with a good amount of them. So there are tribal masks and all sorts of things in that restaurant. I love that restaurant. The food is very good, and the theme is, the vibes are immaculate, as the kids would say. So if you go to Hong Kong, highly recommend. I also highly recommend they do essentially a dining package where you get to watch Momentous. I would do that. So you get to see that interior. They also, I've brought this home. There's a placemat, and the placemat has the sea logo and has different paraphernalia on it. It's really cool. But I like to collect paper garbage because I'm a mental case. So what was that? The vibes are immaculate. That's how I got to get across themed entertainment to the kids. I'm trying my best. Like, I have to continue to be these stories cannot be lost to time. They must be preserved and passed on to the next generation. So all you kids, I got to tell you, instead of telling you that the atmosphere is wonderful, I must tell you that the vibes are immaculate, and that will get you in there to appreciate the height of themed entertainment and what a beautiful art form it is. Anywho, Mysterious Island, Tokyo Disney Sea, is a recreation of the fictitious one in Jules Verne's novel, The Mysterious Island, which serves as Captain Nemo's lair. It's also known as Volcania Island, as featured in the Disney film 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And when guests enter the area, they discover Nemo's secret base, complete with a harbor for his Nautilus, as well as a lab inside the volcano known as Mount Prometheus. Nemo is exploring the depths of the sea and the end of the earth, which allows guests to experience two of Verne's most famous adventures, that being 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Journey to the Center of the Earth. Guests have been invited on a tour in a universe where Captain Nemo actually wanted to share his discoveries. Of course, in the Disney film, he did not think mankind deserved nor would appreciate all of the Earth's wonders. So, yeah. A more magnanimous Captain Nemo in the Disney Sea Park version. I'm not reading Galaxy's Edge. I'm bored with Galaxy's Edge. A remote outpost on the edge of wild space. It's just stuck in my head. I didn't even read that from there. I don't even think it's on the sheet. This is just behind Blizzard Beach. This is probably my number 2, and that's going to be Frontierland in Paris. Henry Ravenswood, born, and this is a really truncated version. There is a 15-page version of this backstory I could read you, and I won't. Henry Ravenswood, born 1795, was a Western settler who struck gold in Big Thunder Mountain and founded the Big Thunder Mining Company, thus creating the city of Thunder Mesa, Frontierland as a whole. Ravenswood became rich and built himself a Victorian manor high on Boot Hill, overlooking Big Thunder Mountain, where he raised his family, his wife Martha and daughter Melanie Ravenswood, born in 1842. Big Thunder Mountain was thought by the local Native Americans to be home to the Thunderbird, a powerful spirit. And according to the legend, its wrath would fall on any who disturbed the mountain. However, Ravenswood would not believe the stories, and time went by and the gold Big Thunder began to run out, making miners dig deeper into the mountain, and you know how the rest goes. Obviously, things did not turn out all right for Henry and his daughter eventually, but I won't spoil those attractions for you. There's a lot more to this. There's stories about the miners stealing gold from Big Thunder, and you could see where they snuck the gold out in the stores across the way. But not only the backstory, this land being supposedly like an entire Western town, but not even just the town, like the middle of town, like downtown, if you will. It's also the outskirts, right? You get to go out to the farms and into the wilderness. And I love the way this land is laid out. You have the train out in the distance, out in the very edge of the town. You know, you walk past the farmlands, past the Native American villages, through the woods, out to the train, and there's a pasture there, sometimes with live ponies, which is the most charming and wonderful thing. And then when you get to town, I mean, the town is gorgeous. The riverboat comes by on the dock, and Big Thunder just across the river, and Phantom Manor up on the hill in this town. There's so many cool things, like the restaurants represent the three precious metals. It's gold and silver and bronze. So like the is it Last Chance? Is Last Chance the name of that one? I think it's the Last Chance Cafe. Is all the finishes are all wood and copper tones for bronze, and then there's the Lucky Nugget, which of course is the gold. That has its own backstory we won't get into now. And then the Silver Spur Steakhouse, obviously for silver. But man, we could spend. I would go, if you really want to dive into this. I believe we started the timekeeping series on Disneyland Paris, The Complete History. There is an episode just about Frontierland. If you go watch that, that is pretty much. I probably read the whole backstory in that episode. So please go check those out. We are talking about actually finishing that series. I hope we get the time and resources to go finish that, because I love Disneyland Paris so much. How are we looking at how are we looking time wise?
46 minutes and 50 seconds.
All right, keep going. The Tree of Life. I don't even know if people know that the Tree of Life has a backstory. Katie, did you know the Tree of Life had a backstory?
I know it has one. I just don't remember.
Okay. Well, once upon a time, no vegetation would grow on Discovery Island, and there were no trees, no shrubs, no flowers, nothing. It was a barren piece of land. And then one day, a tiny ant planted a seed and made a wish. He asked for a tree to grow, a tree large enough to provide shelter for all of the animals. And magically, the ant's wish came true, and a tree began to grow. And it kept growing until there was room beneath its limbs for all the animals from A to Z, from ants to zebras. And as the tree continued to reach for the heavens, the images of all the animals that took shelter beneath its shade appeared on its trunks, its roots, and its branches. You can see the ant. If you go to the Tree of Life Gardens from the left side of the park, if you pass my good friend Bruce the catfish, the shark, he's the, what is he? He's the shark catfish, whatever he is. If you go say hi, you have to say hi to him though. I love Bruce. So go wave to him and then keep going down that path. As you go down that path, you will get to a point where if you keep going straight, the path will break off to the left. Don't go to the left, go forward. There's a sort of what looks like some rotted wood taller than you with a hole in it. If you look through the proper hole, it looks directly at the ant. And that is connected to this backstory, so you understand that's the ant that made the tree happen. Now you know the backstory. Star Tours, you all know Star Tours. I'm going to read Chester and Hester's Dinoorama since we're getting to the end of that. Because it's the best backstory for the absolute worst thing. Dinoland USA is set in a place called Diggs County, which is located somewhere in the western United States. And back in the 1940s, someone found interesting bones in Diggs County, which led to a boom in visitors. From scientists and grad students to other interested researchers, a lot of traffic made its way to Diggs County in search of whatever dinosaur discoveries were waiting to be made. And as they continue to find bigger and better dinosaur bones, the researchers built the Dino Institute to show off their discoveries to travelers from near and far. Diggs County locals and husband and wife team Chester and Hester took note of the influx of visitors in the area and decided to turn their longtime gas station into a general store. With this increase in Diggs County's population, there was a lot of opportunity for the couple to make some extra cash. Their shop, named Chester and Hester's Dinosaur Treasures, is home to all sorts of knickknacks, from toys and books to tacky gift shop finds. The shop really takes on the dinosaur-inspired theme, featuring dino puns and all. And as the Dino Institute continued to grow in worldwide popularity, Chester and Hester were ready to cash in even more. So right across the street from their shop, they opened up Chester and Hester's Dinoorama in the parking lot. The area includes carnival-esque attractions like a spinner ride and a wacky roller coaster. There are also dinosaur-themed midway games to fit right in with the theme. And while most assume that this area was just thrown together in comparison to other aspects of the park, the backstory actually allows it to make perfect sense as to why the area seems so unique and kitschy. Here's what I will say. I love Dinoland. I really do. But I think throughout my life I've understood that it could not last forever. The dinosaur, I love the dinosaur attraction. I really love it. But at the same time, since day one, since I was a kid, I remember people walking up to that ride. They don't know what it is. And they're like, what kind of ride is this? People don't know what it is. And it doesn't do the numbers it probably should, as opposed to the Indiana Jones attractions, which the two of those that exist pull great numbers. And it's the same exact ride system. So, I totally understand making this change. It makes sense to me. Am I going to miss Dinoland? Absolutely. Mostly for this, because it's, they made chicken salad out of chicken excrement with this project. They did not have, Animal Kingdom had several budget cuts along the way. Joe Rohde actually just talked about it in a recent Instagram post about how he was, in his free time, he was painting stuff to hang in the restaurant just so they could fill it in. There wasn't a lot of money there, and so they did what they could. And we're talking about even original Dinoland, which is just the Boneyard and Dinosaur and the Dinosaur Treasure Shop. And then for the expansion, they all believed they were going to get to build Beastly Kingdom as phase 2 of Animal Kingdom. And then, Michael Eisner famously came in and goes, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to add capacity quick with some off the shelf rides. And the story as it's been relayed to me is Joe Rohde tried to say, hey, the Imagineers didn't want to go draw cartoon dinosaurs. But basically he was told, well, either you can draw cartoon dinosaurs or you can go find work elsewhere. And obviously, feeding your family is an important thing. So people who are really excited about and spent years of their lives working on Beastly Kingdom and other things for Animal Kingdom ended up drawing cartoon dinosaurs. And for what it's worth, these incredibly talented people did something with nothing. They were given garbage. They were going to build these incredibly cheap attractions. And it's like, well, how are we going to do this? And they found a way to pull it off, right? Like, look, Dinoorama is not my favorite thing ever, but you can't deny the details. Like the idea of the tourist gift shop would have a parking lot, wouldn't it? So what if they built the fair on top of the parking lot? And what if we built like a fake, and then because they had to, obviously if you're using this parking lot, people got to park somewhere. What if we make the gate to backstage, where the rest of the parking is, and we'll just say it's full and that's where the gate's closed. And, little things like that. It is full of the hallmark details that make Disney Imagineering great, except for the quality of the attractions, right? It's junk. Primeval Whirl was junk. Triceratops Spin is junk. The games are junk. Again, as a cohesive theme, it's really fun and it worked. They made it work way better than they had any right to. But at the same time, it is time to elevate that it's time to bring that to another level. And I think Tropical Americas is going to do that. I'm going to miss Dinoland. It will be one of those Disney World things that stays with me forever, like Great Movie Ride or Figment. But unlike those, I think this is the one where it feels like, yeah, like what are you going to do? You can't, there's no way to update this in a meaningful way that's going to equal higher attendance, that's going to equal merchandise sales, that's going to equal food and beverage sales. By making this another locale from around the world, you stay true to what Animal Kingdom is. So you have another, part of the world where you have that wildlife and that culture, and it ties in nicely to the park that exists. Now, is it a little too much IP compared to the rest of the park? Yeah, but that's the direction we're heading in. We all know that. We know where this is going. Jay Ware said Dak was kind of a failure. The animals cost a lot more than they anticipated, and of course 9/11 and blah, blah, blah. Dak was a failure out of the gate, though, because people went and hated it. I mean, we hated it. there was nothing to do with the opening. The Discovery Island, the Discovery River boats were a terrible attraction. It had almost no capacity. People went in droves to ride it because there was so little to do in the park. They're like, oh, this must be another ride. We missed a major ride. And then they rode it. We're like, nope, we sure didn't. We waited 45 minutes for a slow, hot boat around the park that looked at almost nothing. Remember, Asia wasn't even there. You couldn't even ride Kali River Rapids in 98. There was very little to do. And then 99, all that Asia added was Kali River Rapids. And I think Maharaja was even open already. But there wasn't a whole lot. I remember really disliking that park. Tarzan Rocks opened in 99. The original Jungle Book show was a total disaster. People hated it. And so Tarzan Rocks came in, and I was like, oh, I like this. And then Jammin' Jungle came in, and, not necessarily true to the vision of Animal Kingdom, but I really loved it. And so it started to win me over a little bit. And by the time you get to Everest and Nemo, I'm like, okay, I like this park. I'm okay with this park. But yeah, generally the public didn't buy into it right away either. This hurts when I tell people this. Epcot Center and Animal Kingdom, which tend to be the two favorite parks of most people in the Disney fandom for Disney World, are the two that failed the hardest. And the two that succeeded the most were Magic Kingdom and MGM. MGM was a giant smash hit, far beyond what they thought it was going to be, which is why it needed to expand so much, so quickly. Yeah, so there you go. All right, I'm gonna go. Since we did Pleasure Island, we might as well do Typhoon Lagoon, right? A furious storm once roared across the sea, catching ships in its path, helpless to flee. Instead of a certain and watery doom, the wind swept them here to Typhoon Lagoon. That same fictitious storm from 1955, known as Hurricane Connie, inflicted near total destruction on the nearby island belonging to the descendants of Meriwether Adam Pleasure as well. The fabled Typhoon drastically changed the small, Placid Palms resort village, and to make matters worse, a resultant earthquake and volcanic eruption left the community almost in complete ruins. Surfboards, fishing gear, boats, and other nautical items were flung wildly throughout the area. Trees toppled not only onto some of the buildings, but into them as well. And one old ship tanker was completely overturned, but today guests can walk into it and through the portholes see sharks. Well, this is old. You can't do that anymore. But one old ship tanker was completely overturned, but guests used to be able to walk into it and through the portholes see the sharks and nearby 2,000 fish swimming in a man-made reef. Many species of marine life not necessarily native to the area were deposited in the surrounding waters by the wind and water. That's how they explained it. And even a pair of jaws from the fictional Sharkus gigantus, reminiscent of an actual prehistoric shark known as a megalodon, washed up on the beach. The plucky inhabitants used their ill fortune to transform Placid Palms Resort into the Leaning Palms Resort, referencing the fact that some of the remaining palm trees were almost completely uprooted. Also, the Leaning Palm restaurant is actually leaning over. The local residents resourcefully rebuilt their town as best they could with the flotsam and jetsam of found objects. The much-beloved Walt Disney Imagineer Randy Bright summarized the effect back in the 1980s, quote, "Upon entering Typhoon Lagoon, guests find themselves in a ramshackle, tin-roofed island village landscaped with cargo, surfboards, and other marine wreckage left by a great storm." Typhoon's a great story, too. I love that it ties into Pleasure Island. Very, very cute. Very charming. Yeah. Here's a personal favorite, a short one. Pan Galactic Pizza Port. The restaurant was built around a giant animated pizza-making machine run by a colorful alien named Tony Solaroni from the Spumoni Galaxy, who has been tasked with running Pan Galactic's first Earth franchise location, serving pizza deliveries for the entire solar system. The pizza-making PZ5000 machine features an entertainment event every few minutes, which may feature a futuristic television commercial for the pizza port or a phone call from Tony's equally alien wife, or the pizza-making machine going berserk. If and when you get to go to Tokyo Disneyland, you got to spend some time in Pan Galactic Pizza Port. Some friends passed through Japan this summer, and they had no idea what it was. And I was like, we have to go in here. You have to see this. They had no idea what it was, and they were blown away. They were blown away by Tony Solaroni. It's great. He is the original. He came before Sunny Eclipse, so this is the original idea here. It's very, very fun, and my favorite. I love it. Katie's falling asleep.
No, I'm not.
This is story time. I'm putting you to sleep with my... These are a collection of bedtime stories. She's like, oh no, he still has like 30 pages.
No, we just hit an hour.
We hit an hour. We'll keep going. People don't seem tired yet. We'll give them some more time here. Wilderness Lodge. We'll hang on to Wilderness Lodge. Maybe some of these we'll do another week. I have the Adventurers Club. Let's just do that now, shall we? In 1911, a paddle steamer was traveling through Lake Buena Vista in Florida when it stumbled upon a preserved island home to a couple of alligators and a family of herons. The paddle steamer belonged to none other than Meriwether Pleasure, an explorer of the seas who had set out for the unknown with his family. Meriwether Pleasure was an explorer, an inventor, and a collector. The Pleasure family arrived with a great plan to establish Pleasure Canvas and Sailmaking Limited, and upon arrival, the overgrown island became a flurry of construction, and within a year, the Florida wilderness was no more. It had been overtaken by a sailmaking factory. Before too long, the factory was joined by a power plant, a brass foundry, a town center, and more. In 1920, the long-suffering wife of Meriwether, Isabella, gave her husband the ultimatum. Find a new location to house his ever-growing collection of oddities, or she would do it for him. So Meriwether Pleasure opened a new library on the island, a library that would become a social club for all of his globe-trotting pals, a secret social place for explorers and adventurers, a headquarters for the Adventurers Club. This was until 1955 when Hurricane Connie struck the island, closing off the rusting remains of the island to the outside world, and it seemed the island of Pleasure and its Adventurers Club would be lost forever. Or so we thought. I believe in story the idea is some of them were stuck there, like some of them just stayed until Disney found the island. I believe that was some of the backstory. Someone said this is Reading Rainbow Disney version featuring Tom Corliss. Kind of is. Kind of is. Butterfly in the sky. Take a look. It's not in a book. Disney backstories. Katie left. Katie's gone. I'm alone now. Go ahead. It's fine. I'll be fine unsupervised. Famous last words. I have the backstory. If we want to stick with Typhoon Lagoon, I have the backstory for the Crush and Gusher. The Crush and Gusher is themed around being a water ride built by the locals of Typhoon Lagoon from the remains of a fruit exportation company's produce wash facility. This locale was owned by the Tropical Amity Fruit Exporters Company, which is based in Placid Palms, Florida, before the Great Hurricane of 1955, which hit the lagoon. The hurricane devastated the Tropical Amity plant and destroyed one of its signs, making it appear to say Tropicalamity. Residents of Typhoon Lagoon renamed the plant to the Crush and Gusher due to Tropicalamity's slogan, "Our juices are crushed with flavor, our produce is gushing with taste." The tubes, which are used for fruit transportation and produce washing, would be repurposed into a slide attraction, despite signs throughout the facility expressly saying using the tubes for such a purpose is dangerous and banned. Obviously it's not, because we're doing it. This has been the drink break, sponsored by Diet Coke. Oh man, Disney Sea Tower Terror's got several pages. I don't think we got time for that right now. Are there any I haven't gotten to that the WIGS members watching live are missing out on that we think we should talk about? Yeah. I've talked about the Critter Country. The Critter Country Splash Mountain one I've done 1,000,000 times. Let's see what else we got here. Stormalong Bay has its own story, the pool area at the Yacht and Beach Club. Explorer Stormalong used his boat, the Albatross, to sail the Northeast Atlantic. A huge nor'easter came and blew his ship off course and permanently ran it aground in its current location. The pools are actually made from the boat being dragged through the sand, scooping out holes. If you look, you'll see that the pools are all connected, or at least appear to be. It's Disney landscaping magic because, again, in Backstory, the boat, weaved its course through there before it ended up stuck where it is. You're at about 73 minutes, someone said. We're counting the minutes of the podcast. I don't know if people knew this. Rock and Roller Coaster in Disneyland Paris had its own backstory. It was different. Guests entered a building themed to the fictional Tour de Force Records. The story focused on Aerosmith working with engineers, creating a revolutionary new music experience at the Tour de Force Records studio. After watching the pre-show, which features Aerosmith Steven Tyler hyping up the ride, guests were lured into the testing area where they boarded one of 5 sound trackers, a prototype vehicle for the new experience. Isn't that wild? That's a weird, wild one. Yeah, maybe there's not that many more. Maybe we could just finish these. Oh, here I have the Rock and Roller Drome. I do have the Rock and Roller Drome. XZFR Rock and Roller Drome. According to the legend of the Roller Drome, one of Meriwether Adam Pleasure's passions was the idea of life beyond our planet. In this warehouse, he built experimental aircraft and beamed messages, including a beacon that used Morse code to spell out welcome, to reach out to intelligent life elsewhere. Crazy. That is wild. Not to be outdone, I will say I don't like Disney Springs, but I do like the Disney Springs backstory. So we do have the Disney Springs backstory. That might be a fun one to rattle off here. It is a long one, I think. Yeah, sure, we could do this. Florida has one of the largest concentrations of freshwater springs on Earth, with more than 900 natural springs. Springs have served as locations for Spanish missions, steamboat landings, grist mills, and reservoirs for irrigating crops. A few springs gave birth to towns, including Silver Springs in Marion County, Green Cove Spring in Clay County, and De Leon Springs in Volusia County. Both Wikiwa Springs and Rock Springs are roughly an hour from Walt Disney World property and for decades have been popular natural water parks for tourists and local residents. It's the heart of our whole storyline, said Imagineer Theron Skis. After studying all of the natural kinds of waterways in Florida, we visited quite a few natural springs and we were really committed to delivering something as authentic as possible. The idea of Florida Springs representing not only power and beauty of nature, but optimism and possibilities. Inspired by the small Florida towns that developed in the early 1900s around these bodies of water, the storyline of Disney Springs is that it also attracted its first settlers more than a century ago, and over the decades, the town continued to expand naturally into 4 distinct districts, being the town center, the landing, the marketplace, and the west side. The original group of settlers discovered a natural spring and a wonderful piece of land near it to settle on in the mid-1800s. They built the town center where the residents lived. They even built a waterside promenade where they could gather to relax after a busy day. As the population grew, the town branched out towards the water with the landing, and then on either side of the town center with the marketplace and the west side. It was an organic expansion, and each area had distinctive architecture to reflect the era of development. In the west side, there are remnants of an elevated train trestle that was supposed to be built for the fictional 1950 Spring Centennial Expo that is shown on the poster in Deluxe Burger and at Guest Relations. The expo had hot air balloons and a big distinctive central structure like most World's Fairs that later became Characters in Flight and the Cirque du Soleil building. According to the backstory, a Florida cattle rancher named Martin Sinclair and his wife, Clara, discovered the water source in 1850 and settled there. And Martin became the cattle king of the springs. That's alluded to in Deluxe Burger as well. There is more to that. Like Blaze was the mill. That's why there's saw blades and such in there. Obviously, Morimoto was the bottling company because the sign is still there. Because that was the industrial. The landing became the industrial district because it was Pleasure Island before, and it was easy to make that change. They had a little airport, that being Maria and Enzo's. The Edison was the power plant. There's the observatory with Planet Hollywood, etc. Each of the major businesses, the major buildings, has its own backstory. Mostly the restaurants. Obviously, the town center is kind of just the mall, so they look like homes, kind of. Not really, but it's the idea. Amorette's is the only one that pulls it off. I love that transition from the old, because again, a lot of the marketplace, the Lake Buena Vista Village and, Village Marketplace theme of that end remain still. And so I love Amorette's being on that border, and it is kind of the transition between the mall-looking town center, quote-unquote houses or homes, and the more rustic, woodsy theme of the marketplace. But Amorette's, I wish the entire town center looked more like what they did with Amorette's. I think that would have been great. I love the YZF donor said, I love the backstories for stuff I don't like because it's still awesome. Knowing the backstories makes everything better, and the fact they aren't readily available to visitors just baffles me. Reflections of Earth would have been so much better for many people had they known the story. There's also beating people over the heads, right? I think one of the things people don't like about Luminous is how it beats you over the head with what's going on. It's like it spells out, and eventually someone dies, and then you meet people, and then you get married, and then you have babies. It's like, oh, we got it, thanks. In Momentous, Luminous follows a lot of the same story beats of Momentous, which is the projection show at Hong Kong Disneyland. You can watch both of these on the channel. If you don't think you're ever going to Hong Kong for whatever reason, you just watch it and you'll understand. It doesn't utilize narration to move the story along. You get the idea that it's the story of life. I think Luminous would be great if they just didn't bother explaining it. I think they just should not explain it. I think you could have an opening thing where the pre-show intro just says, like, our life is like a symphony, ups and downs and blah, blah, blah. And people would get it. At that point, you've told people what the theme is, and it's up to people to watch the show and take things in, right? There are plenty of movies and TV shows where they don't spell things out. It's your job as the viewer. The fun is watching and taking it in and trying to piece everything together. And it's the same with these. Not everything should spell it out. Sometimes there should be hints, because otherwise, obviously, in a nighttime show, you can have a narrator say a few words at the very beginning, and that can get you on your way. Some of these things are buildings, right? A lot of these things are buildings. So you have to find ways to get that across, whether it's, signage, a poster, an ad somewhere in the queue, whatever the case may be. There are little hints and things you drop along the way to get people into the story. These aren't necessary things to enjoy it. They are things that exist. And I think Disney eventually, by the time they got to the 80s, arrived at this point where they decided, our storytelling could be more complex. And even if we don't spell out the story to people, we should have the story so that way it guides us through our design process. If we know the story of the place we're building, then that will decide what all of this becomes. It'll decide why this wall is here or why this decoration is here. I think it's just good storytelling to at least have it on paper, if not spelled out for guests. There's a reason why everything's there. And that's what makes Disney and Imagineering so special, is there is a reason why everything is there. And when there's not, that's when we come in and we're like, this is not Disney. So, in defense of Dinoorama, they found a way to make it Disney, but in the end, like, the quality level just wasn't there. Because that's the other side of it too, is even the best possible backstory for the junkiest rides doesn't make that all work. They did their best with what they were given, but it wasn't enough, right? What is the worst backstory? Jay Ware asked, what's the worst backstory? Cosmic Rewind, Tiana, Runaway Railway. Tiana? We think Tiana's a bad backstory? It's no different than most fantasy. I mean, most of the cartoon rides, it is just like, I mean, Splash Mountain was literally Rabbit wants to leave home and finds out that leaving home is dangerous. Like that's not a complex story either. There is an intricate backstory to Splash, which is how the mountain was formed, but that's not spelled out for you in the ride either. You'd never know if I didn't read that to you. You'd have no idea. And the truth is with Tiana, there are layers and layers and layers in that queue, the letters and the photos. There's stuff I didn't understand until I rode the Disneyland version, which I really, really like, by the way. It has all the hallmark. You don't want to hear it is the problem, but it has all the hallmarks of these great attractions we've talked about with their backstories. Tiana has a lot of that. The basic story of the ride, going to the bayou to find a band, it's not a bad story. And then there are layers and layers and layers of that backstory between Larry the Armadillo and his whole side quest that's going on. The story of why Tiana started the business and how the business grew and who's doing what for it and why they're having the party. I know you don't want to hear it, probably, and that's why you're saying it's a bad backstory, but it's actually a really good backstory. It's really, really good. It's very Disney quality. Guardians, I don't know if Guardians is bad. I don't like it. It doesn't belong at Epcot, but if it was somewhere else and it's a parody of Epcot, it's a pavilion at a World's Fair about a planet in space and their culture. I don't think that's a bad backstory. Runaway Railway, I mean, it's the cartoon world, right? Like, I hate that ride, but I don't know that in a cartoon, cartoons have all sorts of wacky things that happen that send characters on their way. So, characters want to go on picnic and something goes horribly wrong. Isn't necessarily a bad story. It's not well executed. The pacing of the ride's not great. You don't pick up on half or a quarter of the things that are happening because the pacing and staging is terrible in it. But the backstory is not the problem. I don't think that the story is the problem. The Tiana queue, I've heard that the Tiana queue is better than the ride. No, that's inaccurate. That's just people being mad. People just being mad to be mad. That's not one of those, like, it's not, there's tons of detail, but it's not like Flight of Passage. Like, Flight of Passage is one of those queues that's like Disney Sea quality where you're just blown away. It's very hard to achieve that Disney Sea level when you're in the real world, right? So, like, Tiana kind of takes place in the real world. Yeah, I guess animals talk, but I mean, it takes place in New Orleans, right? So it's you enter a real building. And so you're kind of pigeonholed by that. You can't do anything big and grandiose and wild because it's a barn, right? I mean, it's a kitchen. Things that belong in a kitchen have to be there. But then with things like, Journey to the Center of the Earth, you're in the Earth's crust. You could do all sorts of crazy things in there. Pandora, it's an alien planet. You do all sorts of crazy things in there. But then there's examples like Rise of the Resistance where I think they could have done really cool stuff and they didn't. That queue is terrible. It is a terrible queue. The pre-show, thankfully, the pre-shows and the ride are fantastic because that queue is a dud. It's just bad. There's nothing to look at, and it's so uninteresting and just so blah. So blah. Jay Ware said, don't sit in the back of Railway, you'll miss half of it. I think you sit anywhere in Railway, you'll miss half of it. I just don't think you see everything. And it's not one of those like Mark Davis, Walt Disney being like, oh, this is great. There's so much going on that you'll have to come back to see it again to pick up on new things. No, this is like you miss the main narrative. Depending where you sit, you miss some part of the main narrative, which is bad. It's different if there are little details in the background you can only see in each vehicle. But when you miss actual parts of the story that you're supposed to follow because you sat in a certain car, that's just bad ride design. It's just not good. It's not a good attraction. I'm going to do Misadventure Falls since we did Typhoon Lagoon already. Misadventure Falls is themed as a shipwreck site of the MS Salty 4, Captain Mary Oceaneer's ship. Cargo and oceanography equipment are scattered around the queue, including crates, Oceaneer's diving bell, frames containing a map of Blustery Bay, that's Typhoon Lagoon's greater area, and a magazine cover featuring Oceaneer and Duncan and some of the beach chairs for them. Duncan, of course, is her second pet bird. There's a different bird on the cruise line who we guess died. We don't know. They just changed the bird for this ride. So maybe the original bird passed away. We have no idea. But guests are loaded onto treasure rafts and after a safety spiel are lifted up a lift hill into the canopy of the tropical forest. Going past the wreckage of her ship and opening the hull reveals a cabin full of treasure where Duncan has set up a spyglass to try and find the treasure and a lost supply of his crackers. Going past the ship's salvage crane, still containing a chest, the rafts enter the first of two enclosed tubes, and along the twisting flume path are a great stone head stuck in a tree and an Aztec statue of a water carrier that drops seemingly endless flows of water on the guests before the rafts finally make their splashdown back at the base camp. It's a good one. Let me see if there's any other good ones here. Port Orleans, I think we should do an episode for each resort at some point, probably. Port Orleans is pages and pages and pages. I think mostly thanks to, I think it's portorleans.org is the website. They have an insane amount of documentation, which I'm glad it exists. It's super great that it exists. Sid Coenga's. Here's a good one. Sid Coenga's one-of-a-kind shop at MGM. The story goes that Sid Coenga and his wife moved from the Midwest to Hollywood in the 1920s, and as the movie industry boomed around them, their Hollywood property became valuable, and real estate agents tried to purchase the couple's house. Being big movie fans, however, the Coengas refused to sell. Instead, they capitalized on the tourists who passed by their home, with Sid deciding to make some extra money by showcasing the movie memorabilia he had collected over the years. Of course, when they opened, there was also a Sid Coenga Streetmosphere character, who they chose not to recast after the performer passed away because he was so beloved. Raging Spirits, Disney Sea. A group of explorers were wandering around the jungle when one day they stumbled upon a 5,000-year-old site, one with idols, a large temple, and two altars, one of fire and one of water. After excavation, the explorers decided to make the fire and water statues face each other. This defilement of the temple has angered the two gods and restarted an ancient battle between fire and water. It's a cool one. See, there's lots of little signs of it through the queue. Again, it's not spelled out, but if you look hard enough, you'll see it. And when you do, you'll fall in love with it. Pizza Rizzo. The area near the entrance across from the ordering station features photographs and mementos honoring who appears to be Rizzo's father. For example, Papa Rizzo's apron from 1916 is on display. Photos featuring a Little League team named the City Rats can be seen, along with a pennant and a baseball bat, and baseball bats in both human and rat sizes. According to a postcard on the corkboard upstairs, the Pizza Rizzo is in Southern California and is the second famous original Pizza Rizzo, so it can be assumed that the first was opened by his father back in New York. I think I have a good one to end on. That would be everyone's favorite, the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, the People Mover. This will be the new Tomorrowland version, which I'm not going to get into too much because we have something coming up that I'm not allowed to announce to the public yet. The WIGS members have heard a little bit about it so far, but hopefully in the next week we're going to have details for you and registration will open. But the TTA's backstory is in the 1994 to 2009 version of the ride made reference to the Transit Authority's three different lines: the blue line, the red line, and the green line. The blue line, which constitutes the actual ride, was Tomorrowland's intra-city elevated train system. The red line took riders off-planet to other destinations in the galaxy, while the green line provided local transportation to Tomorrowland's hoverburbs. There was a diorama of a hub station where all three lines intersect, located on the second floor of the North Show Building, the Interplanetary Convention Center, and other services provided, that's still there, by the way, and other services provided by the Transit Authority, the interstate highway maintenance and long-distance space travel were alluded to in the ride's narration. So that's how they made the People Mover fit in to the new Tomorrowland storyline of 1994, which is a killer backstory in total, and one I think we will get into in depth in the not-too-distant future, again, to allude at what's coming down the road. But maybe next week's podcast, maybe on next week's podcast, we'll talk about what we have cooking. But we're not ready just yet. But yeah. I'm going to collect my 32 pages now. Welcome to the part of the show where I scoop paper off the desk. It's not even a desk, it's a table. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope this was fun. As always, in the comments, you can let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about in the future on the program. And then also, if you're a WIGS member in the Discord, be sure to drop those possible future topics in there. I believe Eric will be. Oh no, Eric's not back next week. I'm still gonna. I think Nick and I are gonna record on Thursday this week. So Nick will be back with me for the next one, and then Eric will be back. I think we'll finally get the three of us maybe in this room in late November. I think finally the three of us will be here for a podcast, which was the intent. We'll make it happen. But in the meantime, I want to thank you all for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We appreciate it. And if you're listening, we thank you for listening too. For Tom Corliss, for everyone here at WDW, and for my co-host today, Sandra Gertie, you said nothing. You were of no help. You just stood there and looked cute the whole time. That's all you did. Anyway, for all of us here at WDW, including Santa Gertie, who did nothing, we thank you for watching. We'll see you real soon.